Hello guys! BlizzCon just announced a very cool expansion for Hearthstone, which is called Kobolds and Catacombs. And this video will be discussing, what's new and all the new cards and all sorts of things. So let's get right into it. So Kobolds and Catacombs is going to release in December, and it's one of the new expansions with all sorts of new cards. There is a new mode that's coming up called Dungeon Runs, where it's going to be free and it's going to be single player. So what happens is it's kind of like a series of arena matches against the AI, right? And then you actually get to craft your deck as you go along. It's kind of like if you played something like Binding of Isaac or something like FTL, Faster Than Light. It's kind of like this roguelike dungeon crawler where you kind of level up as you go along and you're trying to beat all the bosses along the way. And there's going to be no rewards that are like gold or cards in this mode, but you do get a card back if you can complete it with each of the 9 classes. So this is kind of replacing the solo adventures for this expansion, which is, I guess, kind of cool. For the cards themselves, this pretty exciting actually. So first of all, there's a new keyword called Recruit, where we're going to see from some of the cards that are previewed. Basically, Recruit is it pulls a minion out of your deck and puts it on the field. Very similar to Yashiraj right now. But some Recruit cards have limitation. For example, I'm guessing that you can only recruit like a small minion as opposed to like anything in your deck. Every class is also getting a legendary weapon, so that's pretty cool. They also said that caster weapons such as Druid, Mage, Warlock, classes that normally don't have weapons, their weapons are not going to have any attack. So you're just going to basically equip them and have like a passive effect. Kind of like an enchantment, I guess, from MTG, if you may. So that's pretty cool. And then there's also a lot of sub themes on cards. We're just going to dive right into cards, I guess. So another sub-theme of the new cards includes this kind of growing power spells, right? So first of all, we have this Lesser Jasper Spellstone. It's a Druid card. 1 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion, so that's reasonable, I guess. It's not that good because you compare it to Backstab, for example. It's not insane. It's like a Holy Smite. But if you gain 3 armor while this card is in your hand, it upgrades to a Jasper Spellstone, which is same mana cost, but it deals 4 damage instead. And then if you do that again, it upgrades to a greater Jasper Spellstone, which deals 6 damage to a minion, right? So this seems like a really good arena pick because, to activate armor, you need... So to gain armor, you need to activate it, right? So things like Ganache or Bite or Claw, things like the 3 mana card that gains you 8 armor, or even Malfurion, for example, or Ultimate Infestation. These are some ways to activate your Lesser Jasper Spellstone. And the last version deals 6 damage to a minion is actually a huge effect, right? You effectively cast Assassinate or a sap, for example, on a big minion, because it deals 6 damage, just removes it on the field. Big Temple Swing, because it only costs 1 mana, you can continue on doing whatever you want to with your turn. So it is really, really powerful. But you do need to keep it in your hand for a long time. So you need other cards to play with them. So my first impression is that this card is really good in arena. It's like pretty much an auto pick, I guess. And you would want to gain more armor, from other sources, and not just the hero power. And in Constructed, I don't think it is good enough because this is a very aggressive tempo card, and it's asking you to not do tempo plays because you're gaining armor, right? I guess this can work with Malfurion, the Pestilent, but then I just don't see how gaining armor, which is like gaining health, and getting tempo play is a good thing for Druid decks that are happening right now, such as Jade Druid and just mid-range Druid in general. So it's kind of weird and constructed, but very good arena card. Alright, next we have a 2 mana Hunter Secret, Wandering Monster. When an enemy attacks your hero, summon a 3-cost minion as the new target. So this will add to Explosive Trap and Misdirection as traps that activate when your opponent attacks your hero. And this is actually really, really powerful because, well, it's a 2-mana 3-cost minion, right? It might be something bad, like, you know, a Alarmer Bot or something, something that doesn't do anything. But it does prevent your opponent from attacking you. And sometimes, as a hunter, you just want to steady shot and go face, right? So if they can't race you, then you actually have a big advantage. So I see this being a pretty decent card, especially where Cloaked Huntress is still in the game. And Professor Putricide is a card that, you know, it's not really played right now. So Wandering Monster might actually combine with those cards to create a very good aggro hunter. Crushing Walls is a 7-mana hunter spell that destroys your opponent's left and rightmost minions. So it's a 7-mana double deadly shot, but the deadly shot is not a random target, it's your left and right instead. So this is actually really, really crucial in the arena, because usually how people play around your explosive shots or your grievous bites, or in general how you position your minions, is that you want the strongest minions on the far sides of your field, right? Because if you play Direwolf Alpha, for example, you want to put it in the middle, such that your weaker creatures trade off, and then your bigger creatures in the end also gets buffed because the positions shift, right? So Crushing Walls is a very, very strong card in Arena because, well, it destroys 2 of your opponent's minions, so that's already really, really decent. And it also, you know, makes it so that it's really hard to position your minions around correctly, I guess. I don't see this being constructed because 7-mana spells in constructed in the hunter deck is just not good enough. It doesn't do any damage to face, it doesn't buy you any tempo, it's kind of like a reactive play, and if you're playing hunter, you kind of want to be proactive anyways. So I foresee this being unplayable in constructed. Next, we have the series of legendary weapons, and this is Alanef, the Mage legendary weapon. It's a 6-mana 0/3, so you can't attack with it because, you know, you can only attack when you have, you know, at least 1 point of damage in your hero. But it's a very powerful effect. At the end of a turn, you draw 3 cards. So the turn you play this, you already draw 3 cards, right? So 6-mana draw 3, that's pretty good. It's kind of like a Nourish, a little bit more expensive, but it's gonna hang around, right? So you're gonna draw 3 cards basically every single turn. Now, this is pretty bad at control because you're not going to be able to spend all your cards every single turn. And if you're playing if you can play Control Mage and you play this card, your opponent actually gets an alternate win condition, which is basically remove all your threats, and then you're gonna fatigue yourself because you're forced to draw 3 cards at the end of every turn. So I see this being very good in a very aggressive Mage deck. So, you know, perhaps some new cards in the expansion can give us something like Mech Mage. And then when you play Alanef, you can basically draw a lot of your cards every single turn. So you draw your Fireballs, you draw your Frostbolts to go face, you draw more Tempo cards. And hell, if there's like a Dr. Boom in the new set, then this can be a very good high-end, you know, including your win conditions. So this card is definitely something to watch out for if aggro mage gets really, really good. Next, we got a common, a Paladin minion, a 2-mana 1/1 with Death Rattle. Add 3 Silverhand Recruits to your hand. So when this dies, you get 3 1/1s. Very similar to the Elemental, Igneous Elemental, that does kind of like the same thing. 2-mana 1/1 is definitely kind of on the weak side. It doesn't get you any board. And then if you combine all the cards together, it's kind of like a 5-mana 4/4. Although you can only play the first body first and then the last body in like later, right? So it's kind of weird. Obviously the main archetype that, you know, comes to mind is kind of like the hand buff paladins with the Grand Street Enforcer. That is kind of like the card you want to combo this with, but I don't see this being especially relevant in constructed, because in constructed it's really important to gain tempo immediately, right? There are so many different choices of value cards, such as like Spike Steed, that's probably just better. So I think this is just a pure arena card, and in arena you want this if you have a lot of hand buffs, or if you have something like the Stegodon that buffs all yours, that adapts all your Silverhand Recruits. That would be a good choice. Next is a Priest card. Unidentified Elixir is a 3-mana spell that gives a minion +2/+2, but when you draw it, it actually turns into something else. So it doesn't just give it +2/+2. So let's glance over these options really quickly. There's Life, which also gives it Lifesteal. There's Purity, which also gives it Divine Shield. There's Shadows, which summons a 1/1 copy of whatever you're buffing. And finally, there's Hope, which gives a Death Rattle, return it back to your hand. Now, this is actually ridiculous in arena, right? Like, the value of this card is just out of this world, right? Like, all of these cards can just create board states where your opponent just can't win, right? Imagine you play like a the 2-mana 2/2 Shadow Ascendant, right, on turn 2, and then you just play this on turn 3. Like, what if you just play Elixir of Shadows on your Shadow Ascendant? It makes it a 4/4, summon a 1/1 copy of it, and then they buff each other, right? Like, that's just one case where it's really insane, right? If you're fighting a value game, you can get Elixir of Hope, and you effectively 3 mana +2/+2 draw you a card, right? And Divine Shield is obviously OP, and then if you're getting raced out, you get the Lifesteal. It's really good. Obviously, you can't control which one you get, but I feel like that this card is actually just ridiculous in the arena, that it's just like an auto pick. It actually might see play in Constructed as well, because the power level of this card is like super high, right? I kind of see it as like a 3 mana 3/3 sometimes, or a 3 mana 2/2 Divine Shield or something like that with charge, right? So if you can actually put something on the board and then use this on it, then it's really, really powerful. So you know, there's a lot of good priest cards right now that gain you a lot of tempo early game, such as Shadow Ascendant, Cabal Talon Priest. So hey, maybe a mid-range priest might arise from this. And then the legendary priest weapon is also revealed. It's called Dragon Soul. It's a 3 mana 0/3, so once again you can attack, it just sits there. But after you cast 3 spells in a turn, you summon a 5/5 dragon. So this works really well with priest spells that cantrip. So basically drawing another card, such as Power Shield is the major one. Purify, maybe? No, Purify can't be a thing, but you know, Shadow Visions, for example, is another priest spell that kind of replaces itself. So 3 mana make a 5/5 is pretty good, and when you make 2, it's kind of like you're cheating the game, right? So this card is pretty strong, especially in you know, there is this Highland Priest that's going around right now, and you know, Highland Priest runs a lot of spells, so this could see play. In Arena though, this is going to be very, very difficult to make work, because Arena you kind of revolve around minions instead. So this is definitely more of a constructed card. Next we have a rogue minion. It's the Kobold Illusionist, not Cabal Illusionist. 4 mana 3/3 with Death Rattle. Summon a 1/1 copy of a minion from your hand. So this is a 4 mana 3/3 that dies in a 1/1, but then it pulls something out from your hand, right? So you know, there's already some degenerate things that can happen. So if it pulls Undercity Huckster, then it's a lot of value. If it pulls something like it gets an Auctioneer, then Miracle Rogue might be back. Yeah, you obviously want a minion that has an effect, like a Death Rattle effect, or like a end of turn effect, for this to be really good. But I don't think this is going to make constructed waves. It doesn't seem that strong right now. In Arena, I think this is going to be pretty good, because there are a lot of random synergies that work well. So there you go. Alright, next one, we have a very expensive Shaman spell. It's basically a Sapphire Spellstone. So for 7 mana, you get to summon a copy of a friendly minion. So effectively, you get a 7 mana Faceless Manipulator. Obviously not that exciting, right? But if you overload 3 mana crystals when this card is in your hand, it turns into a Sapphire Spellstone, which you get to use Faceless Manipulator 2 times on a single minion. And God forbid, if you can overload 6 total mana crystals, you can summon 3 copies of a friendly minion. Now, obviously the dream is to cast this on, like, you know, a charge minion and then just OTK your opponent, for example. But it is like a really expensive card, so you gotta have to find something crazy to do. For example, you can combo this with Arcane Giant, maybe, in Constructed, summon a lot of Arcane Giants. You just need to play this on the turn you play the big minion, because you can't guarantee that your big minion is going to survive, right? So it might be a little awkward to Constructed. In Arena, I feel like it's also a little bit awkward, because like you're not going to get overload spells that often, and it's also a 7 mana effect, so I don't think you're really breaking the game. There is a good thing about an Arena though, is that sometimes minions just lie around, right? Especially the ones that are really, really big, such as like Sated Threshodon or something like that, right? So there are more targets in the Arena, but less overload that you can make work. All right, the minion, the legendary minion for Warlock in the new expansion is Rin the First Disciple. Now this card is pretty exciting. It's a 6 mana 3/6 taunt, so you know that's already reasonable. It's a little bit under curve, but when it dies, you add the first seal into your hand, which is a 5 mana spell that summons a 2/2 that gives you the second seal, And it also is a 5 mana spell. So all these seals are 5 mana cards, right? And it also gives you the next seal when you cast them. So the first one is summon a 2/2. Second one is 3/3, 4/4, and then 5/5. And then when you summon a 6/6, which, by the way, you spent like 31 mana already, right? You get Azari the Devourer. And Azari the Devourer is a 10 mana 10/10 that destroys your opponent's deck. That's pretty ridiculous, right? So when you cast Azari, you're probably gonna win the game. But then this Azari pretty much costs 41 mana, right? You gotta get Rin on the field, you gotta have it die, and then you gotta spend a lot of mana to make this work. Now, how can we abuse this? Well, there is a spell called Blood Bloom right now that can accelerate the seals a little bit quicker. And you know, if you can find some way to reduce the mana cost of the spells, such as, you know, getting a Sorcerer's Apprentice from somewhere, then it's going to be pretty good. I think this is a god card in Arena because it's basically a 41 mana card. There's not a lot of cards that have that much value baked into card, right? And you can always just play something else. So I feel like this is a really, really strong Arena card. In Constructed though, you do have to kind of abuse the seals for it to work because, you know, a 5 mana 2/2 is not going to really get you anywhere. So yeah, it's going to be interesting making a Rin deck for sure. We have a warrior spell to showcase the new recruit mechanic. 6 mana, gather your party. It basically pulls a random minion out of your deck and onto the battlefield. And of course, if you can make a control warrior deck with only a few top end you know, cards that also activate at the end of your turn, so you got stuff like Lich King or Ysera, you know, or Yashiraj, for example, then this can be very powerful. And then, you know, you run all the weapon removal, you only run like stuff like Execute and not run any minions, then this could be pretty good. Although I just don't think that that kind of deck exists. We have to see the rest. We have to see the rest of the expansion to really evaluate this card. Maybe there's a very good 10 mana warrior legendary that we don't see yet. This is going to be very good in. But this is mainly to showcase the recruit mechanic because it's very simple. Another recruit mechanic that's perhaps a little bit more tricky is the Guild Recruiter. 5 mana 2/4 with Battlecry recruit a minion that costs 4 less. So this is already like really, really powerful because for 5 mana 2/4, if you summon the Yeti, then the stat line is insane, right? If you summon the Yeti, it's like a 6/9 for 5. Obviously, in Arena, it's kind of easy to, you know, put off because you're gonna always have 4 drops and even 3 drops and whatnot. In Constructed, it's gonna be a little bit more challenging in deck building because there are a few things that can really screw you over. So if you only put like a few you know, 4 or less minions, then you don't really have a lot of 2 drops, for example, right? So it really is very specific on the deck list, and especially good in decks that have weapons because you can play weapons early game and then you can play this later on. Carnivorous Cube is a 5 mana 4/6, so pretty good stat line. And with Battlecry, it destroys a friendly minion, so you can play this as just a vanilla 5 mana 4/6, or you can eat something. And if you do eat something, when it dies, you get to have 2 copies of whatever you ate. So it's a kind of a tricky card, and it's a very strong card if you can actually eat minions that are not your own. So for example, you know, you can play Potion of Madness and then Carnivorous Cube after you attack with the Potion of Madness, and then you can summon 2 copies of whatever it's new. And obviously you can eat cards that have Death Rattle effects that give you extra combo potential. And yeah, it's a very interesting card. So I feel like in Arena it's pretty strong. In Constructed, it's going to be probably not playable because it is you know, tempo. It's a negative on the tempo play. You know, you get behind on board, and you know, what's the upside, right? The upside is just summon 2 copies of it when, you know, there's like so many answers to deal with Carnivorous Cube and Constructed as well. So I feel like this is not going to be a Constructed card at all. And finally, we have Marin the Fox, which is the new legendary that just got revealed. Everybody's gonna have this for free on Monday, apparently. So Marin the Fox is gonna arrive sooner than we think, so we can play this. It's an 8 mana 6/6 that summons a 0/8 treasure chest for your opponent, so your opponent gets a 0/8 minion. And when you break it, you get 1 of 4 Marin treasures. So the first one is Golden Kobold, which reminds you of a card called Golden Monkey from before. It's a little different though. It's a 3 mana 6/6 taunt, and it replaces your hand with legendary minions instead of the hand and the deck, right? So a very good finisher if you can get Golden Kobold, because you know you just swarm your opponent with legendaries, and God forbid if one of your legendary minions is Marin again, and then you can just have infinite value then. The next one is Toland's Goblet. You get to draw a card, and then whatever you draw, it's basically duplicated as many times as you can hold it. So it's like a super Thistle Tea. This one is a little bit more value oriented, which means that you're still gonna be behind on tempo. So I feel like this is not as good as the Golden Kobold. But another card, Wondrous Wand, is the opposite of that, right? For 3 mana, you get to draw 3 cards, and all their costs turn to 0. Now, this is a super tempo card because, if you draw a 3 mana, 5 mana, and 7 mana card, you basically gain 12 mana, and you can also play them in the same turn. So Wondrous Round seems to be the best one of the bunch. You can also just play them later because they're always going to be 0. And the tempo gain from this is actually ridiculous. And finally, we have Xerox Crown, which is a 3 mana spell again, so they're all 3 mana. Discovers a legendary minion, and then you summon 2 copies of it. So really powerful if you have the right class for it. So for example, if you're Paladin and you summon 2 Ethereans, that's way stronger than if you would be playing a class that doesn't have a lot of good legendary minions, such as Druid, for example. Well, okay, fine. Maybe Tyrantus is really good. Maybe this is just good in all classes. But the point is, Xerox Crown is also a tempo play. So I think Xerox Crown is also really good. So, if you order these by, power level, I think Toland's Goblet is definitely just the worst one. Now, how often is it that you can actually kill the 0/8 treasure chest? Well, of course, you can use cutesy stuff like Crazed Alchemist to break it immediately, or you can use Poisonous Minions to kill the 0/8 immediately, or the final thing that can probably be the best is that you can use AoE effects, such as Twisting Nether or Shadow Flame, or, something like Brawl to get rid of the treasure chest, and then you can get value from it immediately. So yeah, Marin the Fox seems a little bit interesting in that it gives you a late game card, kind of like Elise. It is really expensive for the effect though, but I can see the treasures being really, really powerful. So there you go. This is Kobolds and Catacombs expansion that's coming in December. Of course, I'm going to be playing the expansion live on Twitch, so you guys should check me out. Just follow me immediately, and when the release date is set, I'm going to be doing a extended stream playing it. So I'll see you guys there, and of course, when there are new cards, I'll give you guys my impressions on it. So see you there.